Thank you, Program Director, or better still, Program Directors. Your Excellency, President Julius Maada Bio, Chairperson of the APR Forum and Head of State of the Republic of Sierra Leone, Your Excellency Abdullah Jane, Chair of the APR Panel of Eminent Persons, and Professor Maluka, the CEO of APRM Continental Secretariat, and representatives of the APRM Continental Secretariat and all the other structures of our African Union structures who are here this evening, ministers and deputy ministers. And I particularly want to welcome our former Deputy President, Baleka Mbete, who is here with us, members of the Diplomatic Corps, and ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure to be here amongst you as we mark the 20th anniversary of the establishment of the Africa Peer Review Mechanism, which, as we have heard, is a tool and a vital tool for that matter of achieving the Africa that we as Africans want. I also am pleased to present South Africa's second generation country review report, together with its national plan of action. The Africa Peer Review Mechanism would not have been possible and would not have been able to record such great progress on our continent were it not for the vision, the foresight, the leadership and the efforts of a number of African leaders. These are leaders who have been on this continent's journey since the APRM was first established in 2003 at the new Partnership for Africa's Development Heads of State Summit in Abuja, NEPAD. And I want to particularly acknowledge the role that has been played by President Thabo Mbeki, who was the chair of the African Union when the APRM was launched 20 years ago, and who has been one of the mechanism's most ardent and consistent advocates and supporters. I also wish to acknowledge the role that has also been played by President Olusegun Obasanjo, who was also instrumental to launch the APRM and ensured that Nigeria became one of the very first countries to accede to the mechanism. And of course, there are quite a number of other former leaders of our continent who played a key role in all this. For instance, President Wade, former president of Senegal, President Bouteflika, former president of Algeria, and indeed many others. 20 years ago, they laid a vision of the APRM to foster the adoption of policies, adoption of standards and practices that lead to political stability, economic growth, sustainable development on our continent, and accelerated economic integration through the sharing of experiences, the sharing of examples that African countries were going through, and the reinforcement of best practice as well. However, our collective resolve to ensure that the APRM remains relevant has been tested by a number of recent events across our continent. Rather sad events. Over the past 3 years, there have been a number of coups and attempted coups and other non-democratic transitions of power on our continent. A number of countries in Africa are beset by terrible and protracted conflicts, wars, and violence, causing devastation, loss of life, and livelihoods that are disrupted, and also economic productivity that is destroyed. Elsewhere, also on our continent, we are also witnessing democratic gains that are being rolled back, fundamental rights and freedoms that are being curtailed, and the positions of already vulnerable groups on our continent worsening. These developments should trouble all of us. They are setbacks in our quest to realize what the visionary leaders of our continent said we should accede to have the Africa that we want, one that is characterized by good governance, one that is underpinned by democracy, by respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. Just as the erosion of democracy poses what one would call a threat to the realization of Agenda 2063, so too do the pressing challenges that are experienced on our continent, they being poverty, inequality, underdevelopment, and also unemployment that is pervasive on our continent, all of which have been exacerbated by the effects of COVID-19. Never has the need been greater for a structure like the APRM, a voluntary governance self-monitoring mechanism that, according to a South African think tank, said encourages countries to take responsibility for directing the course of their own development. On this 20th anniversary of the establishment of the APRM, we once again make a call for all countries that have not yet acceded to this mechanism to sign up and become part of this forward momentum to a better Africa. We are pleased and honored that the South African launch of the second generation country review report coincides with this 20th anniversary. The report reflects South Africa's ongoing commitment to promoting good governance, especially as we will soon be observing and celebrating 30 years of our own democracy. A democracy that was hard-won, but also a democracy that our continent, in its various iterations, participated so valiantly, so bravely in ensuring that the people of South Africa win. South Africa was the first country to be offered the opportunity to undertake self-assessment and to be peer-reviewed on their respective thematic areas. I want to express my appreciation to Bishop Dennis Sungulane, who led the external mission that visited South Africa in December 2021. Thanks also should go to all national and continental structures, as well as stakeholders who ensured the successful conclusion of the self-assessment and peer review process. The report serves as an important knowledge base and provides a foundation for improving governance. And Professor Maluka is right. The APRM is a mirror that all of us should use to look at our faces and to see how we can improve the looks that we see on our faces. And if we see a pimple, and if you see a pimple, we should not attack the mirror. I saw a pimple on my face this morning. I promise you, I was not tempted to smash the mirror. So Professor Maluka is absolutely right that we should really see the APRM as a mirror, as a moment of self-reflection, self-assessment, and to also take on the recommendations that are inherent in the reports that we are given to improve ourselves. So as we celebrate 20 years since the founding of the APRM, we should acknowledge that despite the setbacks, democracy indices on our continent are strong and resilient. We've had setbacks, but the movement is to go forward. And what setbacks we have gone through should not deter us and get us to smash that mirror. Public support for democracy remains high across the continent. The people of Africa continue to be hungry for democracy. They have embraced it, they have tasted it, and I'm sure they are not going to give it up at all. Africa has an active citizenry. Electorates are showing time and again their rejection of authoritarianism and other threats to democracy. So those who would want to be autocratic, to be despotic, your days are over on this African continent. The people of Africa, the people of our continent want to see democracy reigning supreme on our continent. In no small part, the APRM has really contributed to strengthening and consolidating democracy across our continent. It is significant that the APRM now stretches across all the AU regions, and that the vast majority of the African Union member states are part of the mechanism. This is a clear demonstration that democracy, good governance, rule of law is what our people on the continent want to thrive. It is a firm rejection of this hopeless continent narrative that was once put on the front pages of magazines such as The Economist and many others. We are proud of how far we have come as Africans, as African countries, and we look to the future with a great deal of optimism and hope. Africa is pregnant with hope and optimism, and as we look forward, we know that the road is not going to be an easy one. But then again, we want an Africa that is prosperous, an Africa that is successful, and an Africa that empowers its women, an Africa that gives great opportunities to the youth of our African continent. And long may this journey of the APRM carry on. Lastly, I'd like to thank those who have put in a great deal of work in the Secretariat, and I'd like to thank Professor Maluka for the excellent work that he has been doing in leading us on this journey. The Africa that we aspire to indeed is emerging, and thank you to all who participate in making sure that we do finally get the Africa that we want. I thank you.